Sometimes people ask us for this one-size-fits-all advice. They'll say, hey, our resident or my loved one, they're agitated. What do I do when they're agitated? Just in general. Do you have like advice for what we should do every time they're agitated? And it's like, no.
No.
Sorry.
There's not one size fits all advice for the specific question, other than we always want to be a dementia detective. What do I mean by that? We want to use our skills of observation and listening and, thinking and planning to figure out what might be going wrong for the person living with dementia. If this person cannot communicate verbally as well as they used to, and they can't explain to you what's going on, you have to use your detective skills to figure it out. But occasionally people will say, well, just tell me how to fix this. We once had somebody say, what do I do if my, mom gets really agitated, but I'm doing the opposite of everything you told me to do? I said, what? She said, well, you're telling us to embrace their reality and go to their world and do all this stuff. But what if I did all the opposite of that and then she's agitated?
Uh-oh.
And I said, don't do that first. And the audience kind of laughed. And I tried to say it in the nicest way, which is, well, first of all, you got to start off on a good foot. You have to embrace her reality first. She probably won't be agitated. So she was saying, well, how do I de-escalate that? And it's like, well, don't escalate it.
And people get tripped up too. They feel bad when they learn about embracing their reality and they sort of realize, oh my gosh, I've been doing things wrong this whole time. And it's like, it's okay. Don't beat yourself up. Now you know, and now you can move forward.
Now you can do better. Once you have the knowledge, you can do better.
Yeah.
So we always tell people, don't beat yourself up. You didn't know. Communicating with somebody living with dementia does not come naturally. It's in some ways, the opposite of what we've always learned, right? You have to tell the truth. You have to do this, that, and the other. But when someone's living with dementia, their truth has changed, perhaps. And so we need to adjust our truth to meet their truth. And I think that is so out there for most people. And in a lot of ways, learning about dementia care communication is like learning a different language. It takes practice and time.
Yeah, let's tell our lovely audience some of the questions that we guide our dementia detectives through, or that we sort of ask as dementia detectives. So the first one that comes to mind is, let's go back to the agitation example. Are they getting agitated at the same time every day, right? Is it always happening in between meals? Maybe they want a snack. Maybe they're tired. Maybe, what else?
They are overstimulated.
Yeah.
They're understimulated. They're bored. There's a certain person they run into or they see who agitates them, even if it's somebody who's not doing anything to them. But maybe that person looks like somebody they really didn't like 30 years ago. I had that resident.
Yes.
I had a resident like that. I had this woman who, 80% of the time was fine. But when she got in a mood, she decided that I was sleeping with her husband.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, her husband also lived at the building. And so, this didn't really help her delusion at all. And I always say embrace their reality. I'm not going to go and say, oh yeah, I am having an affair with your husband. And instead, what I would do is say, I'm so sad that you feel that I would do that to you. And she was very aggressive and get up in my face. And I would just have to leave. I would have to leave the floor for 15, 20 minutes so she could calm down. And when she was calm, she was fine with me. But my presence would just ramp her up. So she was already mad. She'd see my face. And, who knows? Maybe I looked like somebody that she didn't like, years before.
Yeah. In that case, it's really difficult to know about their personal history as a couple.
Right.
But in other situations, like shower time, for example, the personal history of the person, you can find that out through their loved ones, their family members.
Yes.
I'm thinking in the context of senior living, right? So if somebody took baths at night their whole life, and the staff is coming to give them a shower in the morning, that could be something that triggers them, right?
And they might not be able to say, hey, I always did it this way.
Right.
And now you're changing it up. And I think this is also where people get this idea like, oh, people with dementia are regressing. They're like children. No, they're adults who've lived full lives. They are just losing some of the gains they've made in adulthood. And the challenge with that is we do see some natural human behavior overlap between very young children and people who are missing some of those cognitive reserves they used to have. And that's not because they're turning into children. It's just because at base, this is what we are. We are all human, and we all have needs and wants and a history that if we can't verbally communicate it in a clear way, we have to be a detective. We have to look into, okay, how can we solve this for this person?
Absolutely. One more thing that comes to mind is environmental factors. So interior design, right? Things that could be perceived as a whole. You know, the toilet can be scary for somebody living with dementia if they're just perceiving it as a whole, or if there's a strange pattern on the ground that they perceive, again, as a whole, or as a line that they need to step over as a physical barrier. And these are things that could, you know, freak somebody out, but they're not able to communicate that, or a pattern that's moving, or even a hallucination or delusion.
Right. Absolutely. So these are just some of the things that we, encounter when we're dementia detectives. And instead of looking for like a specific catch-all, save-all scenario, what you want to look for is, in this specific situation with this specific person, how can I be a dementia detective and make the change needed for this individual?